So I am Dr. Aila Khan. I'm a senior lecturer at Western Sydney University at the School of Business. So senior lecturer is, of course, my academic role at the university. I basically lecture in marketing, as Hamad was saying earlier on. Plus, I'm the academic course advisor for higher degree research students. This is my governance role. And in simple words, what this means is if you're interested in doing your research degree, which is MPhil, PhD, Masters of Research, in any domain of business, so whether you're looking at marketing or management or economics, finance, property, sports, so we cover a range of areas. Come and have a chat with me. Of course, these days we can always have a chat on Zoom. Fatima is very much based in Pakistan. Give her a buzz and one can always look at different options. So it is an interesting topic that we are looking at today, online shopping behavior in COVID-19 context. But I thought before I start off with, what kind of online shopping we've been witnessing in Australia, let me try and just introduce the country to you. So I've got two maps there. One map, the colorful one, shows all the major states, all the states and territories in Australia. And I've got another map there which highlights all the important big cities of Australia. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with them, thanks to all the cricket matches which take place here. So it is the biggest island of the world, and you can see it's a big continent there. It would also be good if we compare the two countries, because there are some similarities and of course some stark differences as well. Both countries are huge, Australia and Pakistan, but as you can see over here, Australia is huge because of its size. So you can take a look at the area that I've listed over there. Pakistan is huge because of its population. 220 million, which I think is probably an underestimate. We recently had a census in Australia last year. The results are still supposed to come in, but we estimate that we are close to definitely 26 million people. As you can see, the biggest country, the biggest city in Pakistan, Karachi, has a population of 17 million. Now, I do think that's also probably an underestimate. I would have thought that it's easily more than 20 million people. So I'm giving you all these statistics and figures because it sets things in perspective. If you look at the area of Australia, this equals to about 8 or 9 Pakistans. So if you were to put 8 or 9 Pakistans altogether, that's how big really Australia is, with so few people in comparison to Pakistan. I think the interesting thing between both the countries is that we do have lots of ethnicities. So just as we have people coming from different backgrounds and we have so many different languages in Pakistan, similarly, we find that in Australia, more than actually 30% of the people are born overseas, so they do have a different ethnicity. Most of the people who are born overseas come from United Kingdom and now, of course, from China and from India. Look at the differences in average income. So the average income, of course, in Australia would be much higher than the average income in Pakistan. This figure does not mean that everybody in Australia earns this much. There are, of course, many people who earn a lot more. There are many people who would earn a lot less, but this is the middle value. The average income in Pakistan is close to $600. It's much better than what it used to be in 2005. I believe that is the point when we have the least amount of money or least income amount per person. So it has come up, but of course, then again, this would be reflected in consumption behaviors. If I can just move to the next slide. I hope that is visible now. And I thought I would also introduce the Pakistani community, which is in Australia. It is a small community because there are far more Pakistanis in the Gulf, as you would know, in United Kingdom, in United States. But this is a diaspora. It is a community which is a fast growing community. I think once we get the census results, you will discover that this number 97,000 has gone up. We do expect it to be close to 120,000 Pakistanis now in Australia. We are the biggest contributor of overseas born Muslims in Australia, almost 15%. And some of our Pakistanis, of course, are playing very critical roles in the community. Dr. Mehreen Faruqi, who is now in the Australian Senate, comes from Karachi. And Usman Khaja, of course, our very popular cricketer, was born in Islamabad. And if you've been following Wasim Akram and Waqar Yunus, both of them, because their wives are from Australia, they often are here in Sydney and Melbourne as well. So what was happening during COVID in Australia? So I guess we are still going through COVID, but the restrictions have somewhat now relaxed. I think Australia had what was once termed as the harshest lockdown in the world, which to some extent a lot of people would agree with. Melbourne was the city which was considered to be the most locked down city in the world, with 246 days of lockdown. There were very strict border restrictions, so none of us could visit Pakistan for more than 2 years. We were not allowed to leave the country. It was very difficult for international visitors to visit Australia. And of course, there were very heavy fines if anybody was seen to be breaching any of the COVID rules. I have to mention over here that this is now all the, the gory details. If you look at the screen, the image shows that we did have a lot of support coming in from the Australian government as well. So there were disaster payments made, there were welfare payments made, especially to certain communities where they felt that students or elderly, or there were people who were unemployed because of COVID, there were some contributions being made on that front. Now, I would like to ask either Fatma or one of the gentlemen, if you can let me know if I'm going over time. I would like to reserve some time for questions as well, but it's slightly more difficult for me to see the watch there. Okay. I've made a list, I've highlighted some of the behaviors which got reported actually in the newspapers, and some of the weird behaviors that we were seeing in Australia, as well as in other parts of the world, and which also then had an impact on online shopping. So one thing, of course, was panic buying, I guess, which is almost expected. In most parts of the world, whenever there's been a disaster, such as hurricanes or floods, this is what happens, that people go in and they buy more than what is actually needed at home. And so we had many grocery stores, retail outlets, which were absolutely empty. Once products finished here in grocery stores, people took that panic buying to online shopping as well. So this was one behavior which we saw. Another which became more of a joke, international joke, people started piling up on toilet paper. So there used to be absolutely a shortage going on as far as toilet paper is concerned. And then on a more positive note, we did see a lot of nationalism going on. Generally speaking, in an Australian grocery store, you can see products from all over the world, especially fruits and vegetables, and partly because of COVID, because there weren't many shipments coming in, people had to go to their own local suppliers. But then people also started enjoying that local supply of fresh fruit and vegetable. Now, I have to apologize over here. I've got a very noisy dog in the background. This is my neighbor's dog, and he doesn't seem to be stopping. So let's hope he settles down there. I thought this analysis, which has been presented in one of the business magazines, was very apt. And those of you who are familiar with consumer behavior can probably relate to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow was a philosopher, and he presented this pyramid style structure, and his whole concept of hierarchy of needs was that people look after their most basic needs first before they try and look after their other needs. So the basic needs are physiological needs, your need for food. And once that is looked after, you start looking after your next safety needs. And then, of course, people start looking after the need for belonging and love and affection. And eventually, right at the very top is self-actualization. So keeping in mind that theory, a lot of people then started looking at human behavior, both online as well as offline. And they said, actually, we can plot this behavior in a pyramid sort of structure, and we can apply the same theory as Maslow's needs. So right at the very bottom, which is this darkish blue thing here, they said this was when the pandemic started and everybody was unsure, uncertain what's happening. And this was when you saw a lot of panic buying happening. People started off looking after their safety needs, security needs, so buying a lot of sanitizers and masks and so on. And also trying to buy a lot of pantry products, so canned food and so on. So this is what was happening at this stage. And as the pandemic set in, and as we continued with the lockdown, at least in Australia and many other parts of the world as well, people were started embracing the concept. They started almost, fitting in with what the reality in those days was. And it's interesting, in this middle stage, this is where people, in order to keep themselves occupied, they started ordering like board games online. And you saw a lot of people then investing in stuffed furniture and office desks, because this was now going to take a few months, if not years, as in the case of Australia. So people started relaxing a bit more and investing in other sort of items. This was when they said that people started spending more time in the kitchen as well. And you saw a lot of orders for bread machines and other kitchen equipment too. And then they say right at the very top, which Maslow's phrases as self-actualization. This is where people started really, doing something just beyond to improve themselves, to try and, when you reach right at the pinnacle, this is where people started ordering gym equipment and started looking after their health as well. And some people became highly creative. And we did see a lot of examples in the news, being creative in the kitchen, being creative with art and craft, and maybe painting walls and so on. So I thought this was something interesting, which I should share with you all. I've made a list of, I guess, online shopping behaviors, which we could see on perhaps the 4 Ps of marketing. So if we look at the first P of marketing, products, what kind of products were popular in Australia online? So definitely groceries were a big tick. No matter what, people were still spending money on groceries. But very interestingly, apart from toilet paper, which I've mentioned before, people started spending a lot on alcohol. So that also became somewhat of a joke. This is how people were getting used to being in a lockdown. As far as services are concerned, we saw a lot of money being spent, yes, on cleaning services, telehealth. People started doing yoga, so there were yoga classes going on online. And of course, very sadly, we did see an uptake of funeral services as well. As far as payment is concerned, we discovered that people moved beyond just using credit cards. So credit cards was one method, but then digital wallet or mobile wallet also became very popular. So this means pretty much you have your credit card sitting on your mobile phone. So when you go to the supermarket, for instance, you just need to use your mobile phone and not carry anything else. And as it says over here, some people also had their systems on their smart watches. We also saw different types of deliveries taking place. So one was definitely home delivery. Another option was click and collect. So pretty much you order online, but you can collect it either outside on the curbside, or you can also walk in and get your groceries yourself from the store. Interestingly, a lot of people were very happy with supporting local businesses. So while before COVID, we used to have a variety of products available, we did see that as far as Australian made products was concerned, that definitely had an uptake there. And we did discover that another thing which became very popular were obviously tools such as Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and I believe Google also has a competing service available. Some interesting things as far as online services was concerned, which I thought I must mention here as well. Sadly, there weren't as many people getting married during COVID, obviously, because weddings were not allowed in Australia, but we did see a lot more divorces taking place. So there were a lot more of consultancies going on with legal services online. And quite creatively, we did see that people started doing virtual tours. So while the Japanese tourists could not visit Sydney, there were some very creative people who started taking them on a virtual tour of Sydney, so showing them the Opera House, Harbour Bridge, and so on. So that was something which also kicked off. Another thing which gets the mention, especially in newspapers, was how people's wardrobes changed. So spending on luxury products went down. So nobody was really interested in spending a lot of money on, let's say Gucci jacket or a Gucci handbag. But we did see people relaxing a lot more and spending more on comfortable attire, such as sweatpants. We did see that because people were spending more time at home, there was stuff like candles being sold, or home products, just to make yourself more comfortable at home. And then, of course, like I've mentioned, creativity kicked in, and we did say that there were record sales of jigsaw puzzles and, drawing by numbers and stuff like that. So this was all online purchases, because in a country like Australia, of course, all retail outlets had to also close down, or it was too expensive to remain open. Some other products, which I guess also deserve a mention over here, we did see that people were spending and ordering many plants. I was one of them, and I did place an order 2 or 3 times, and it was amazing how a plant can arrive pretty intact in a cardboard box. With, they used to make sure that they had a lot of wet tissues and, packaging material there to keep it intact. I believe a lot of people started doing chores around the house, so do-it-yourself kind of stuff. You've got a leaky roof, and how about that? I fix it now, and that's why a lot of such products started getting ordered. I have to say over here, the negative impact of doing your own home renovations was that the doctors were then reporting that there were a lot more people coming with injuries and falls. So the ICUs were anyway getting prepared for COVID emergencies. And on top of it, we did have a lot of people who had home injuries coming through as well. Definitely the number of adoptions as far as cats, dogs, or other pets is concerned, that really boomed as well. And I'm sure my neighbor has bought his dog recently during COVID as well. And of course, one of the best things that we've experienced, definitely I can say for Australia, was that charity in no ways went down. In fact, it went up. And because I look after the Australian office for Shaukat Khanum, I can say for sure that it's not just Shaukat Khanum. We've also got ED Australia over here. They've also reported 20% increase in their donations during COVID. As did Shaukat Khanum. We've also got, I think, Al Khidmat Foundation. So all charities said that, in spite of the fact that people lost jobs and people probably did not have as much to spend, theoretically speaking, they were still giving to charity. And one of the explanations which an expert offered was that perhaps it was because of this theory where human beings, whenever they feel that a fellow human being is in dire circumstances, facing an emergency, we do step up and we do try and offer help. So this is one sort of probably an innate characteristic of all human beings. Another explanation was that during COVID, of course, people could not spend on going overseas to visit their relatives. They could not spend on performing Hajj because, of course, Mecca wasn't letting any pilgrims in. So any leftover funds that people had, they were spent in charitable giving. So I guess it would make a very interesting research project if we were to try and explore that more. There have been some ethical issues as well. So things have not been just hunky-dory. I cannot say that everything went very well. We did find that there were some people who anyway had more of a likelihood to get addicted to online shopping. And because everything was online, and there are many, many people who have reported that while attending a Zoom meeting or while being in a meeting on Microsoft Teams, they have been doing a lot of online shopping as well. And I think this is where experts were a bit worried. What happens to people who can get addicted there? We did have some reports coming in that online gambling has gone up. We also had news that online pornography has also gone up. So these were the kinds of things which I guess would be the negative side of being online. Of course, in Australia, because of very, very rigid lockdown, we did hear news about increased cases of domestic violence as well. I guess while it is sad that there were more probably women being victims of domestic violence, the opportunity over here is for businesses to step in and do something about it. And the image that I've placed over here is from The Body Shop, which has tried to bring together women and bring together a platform where domestic violence victims can at least come up and speak up and register their complaints. Similarly, there has been a drive in Australia that hairdressers and beauty salons, their assistants and their service providers must be trained so that once a woman, or for that matter, a man walks in, and you can see that they've got maybe some bruises there, which seem to be a little suspicious, they must be able to offer the right kind of help to such victims. So what would be the post-COVID scenario like? So we have witnessed what is supposed to be pent-up demand. So pent-up demand refers to the phenomena where perhaps for a long time, where consumers are not allowed to spend. It doesn't mean that their need disappears. It doesn't mean that the demand has vanished. It keeps, in a way, stocking up. And once they get an opportunity to spend, suddenly you'll see a spike in demand. So this phenomena has been referred to as the pent-up demand. So definitely that phenomena we are already witnessing in a lot of industries. It's also interesting to see that people say that will consumers still be brand loyal to their old brands? And over here we feel that consumers might actually become more loyal to brands who they felt were being more socially responsible, especially during COVID. We do also feel that omni-channel marketing will become the norm. So it's not just physically going to the retail store. Many of us who may not be able to go back to a retail store because of underlying medical conditions will be able to connect with retailers over Zoom. So perhaps the retailer can show you around what's available within a retail outlet, so that the shopping experience could be, the physical outlet is there, but it can also be beefed up by an online or a virtual experience. I think I can see Bilal there. So Bilal, I'm sure I've gone over time. Is that right?
Dr. Aila, it is humble to remind you that 15 minutes are left. So I just giving you a reminder.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think this is pretty much my last slide. I'll in fact stop sharing if that's all right.